When I was a very small child, there was a day, or maybe even multiple days, where a family friend would babysit me at their house. It's a memory so far back that I can just barely remember it through the thick fog of time. As far back as it was still incredibly formative in what I would later come to appreciate about video games and movies and art, generally all the media that I love. In this family friend's house, I typically would spend most of my time in their guest bedroom. In this bedroom, all they had was a bed, a TV, and a Super Nintendo. She had plenty of games, her children loved them, but the one that I was fixated on more than anything was Donkey Kong Country 2. I was absolutely enchanted by that game. The music, visual design, and the world that Rare created drew me in like nothing I had ever experienced before. Not that I had experienced much, I was 4 at the time. It was all executed so perfectly that I was able to accept that world as almost its own reality outside of the guest bedroom I was playing the game in. In a technical sense, that's absolutely true. A virtual world that's interactable, running in real time, the same scale we're used to as human beings existing in this universe. But that's not how I saw it. Rare had created a world I could so easily lose myself in. A world that, due in large part to its graphical style of pre-rendered graphics, felt more real to me than the room I was sitting in. At least as a 4-year-old. I wasn't good at the game. I never finished it until I was a teenager. But that didn't matter to me. Because the world of Donkey Kong Country 2, or Crocodile Isle, is a world that was fun simply to exist in. To really be there, explore those shipwrecks, walk through those woods, ride the roller coasters, and feel like I was part of that reality was huge. It was such a large influence that the simple act of walking or driving through that part of the neighborhood where that family friend's house was is enough to bring back not only strong memories of Donkey Kong Country 2, but strong memories of the first time I played it, flooding back into my mind, all this time later, through all these years. Later that year, Christmas of 1999, my parents got me Donkey Kong 64 as a gift from Santa. I still remember it initially not working because we didn't realize that you had to put the expansion pack in the Nintendo 64 in order to get the game to work at all, even though that was on the front of the box. But once we did get it working, that complete and total engrossment in another world was back in full swing. Only this time to a greater degree. I completely lost myself. Donkey Kong 64 has not aged very gracefully. There are large stretches of this game that I really wouldn't consider fun. More often than not, you'll be met with frustration rather than an actual challenge. Puzzles that you've already solved in your head well before the game actually allows you to physically solve them. A camera that insists on being anything but smooth and responsive. More collectibles than I care enough to care about at any given time. And the most egregious, the incessant backtracking. areas that are gated off from you simply because you walked in with the wrong character, of which there are 5. And then when you finally do go back, grab the right character, and open that door or press that button, you'll find that whatever was revealed to you now requires someone else, and you're walking back again. From a game design standpoint, in a 3D platformer reminiscent of Banjo-Kazooie or Mario 64, this is needless, and can only be seen as artificially stretching out the game's length. This constant back and forth is where the game is at its worst. Near ubiquitous stretches of game where there are copious items you can't get, doors you can't unlock, or areas you can't explore fully, all because you were playing as Diddy Kong and not Chunky Kong. At best, half of this game is built on tedium and needless filler, and these worlds you explore are gigantic. Gigantic and filled with collectible bananas and coins and golden bananas and new moves and guns and instruments. Donkey Kong 64, by today's standards, is really not great. It's not bad, but it's not great. And even in the face of all its objective downsides, all the negatives, Donkey Kong 64 is my favorite game of all time. For so long, I really haven't been able to verbalize why it's my favorite game. It just is. There is something there that keeps me mentally returning to that world all the time. I still, to this day, consistently daydream about Donkey Kong 64. There is an allure there that I just cannot escape. Why? I think one very important aspect is the visual design, and the absolutely insane attention to detail for a game released in 1999. And not only how well the world is realized in-game, but how I built these strange mental connections from the virtual game world to the physical world that I grew up in. Frantic Factory is the third level of the game, and it's set in an abandoned toy factory. Near labyrinthian in its design, it sat empty for so long it is now inhabited by the very toys that were created there come to life. It's dark, eerie, cold. The music is sinister. The shadowy metal corridors act as gateways to the next piece of the puzzle, but also as a dark warning of what terrifying challenge could await you in the coming rooms. And yet, when I remember how Frantic Factory made me feel as a child, my mind is simultaneously flooded with memories of the sports and outdoors department of Walmart. K. Rool's giant mechanical island is situated just opposite of DK Isle. Whenever you go there, it will immediately start to storm. Lightning flashes from the sky rip through the world as water pours down from an empty sky. The sun is still clearly visible, another indication that this storm is not natural. This place screams danger and darkness, and yet it gives me very vivid memories of my grandmother's old house. The exact opposite vibe. This chamber inside the Banana Ferry Island is one of the most cozy spaces I've ever seen in a AAA video game. I feel like I could so easily take a nap in this room. These pools filled from waterfalls with crystal clear, shimmering water. All of this, and I cannot help but to be reminded of this particular stretch of trail in the Pine Flatwoods. Do you see what I mean? How do I explain that? Where is the logic in that kind of thinking that to my mind feels so natural? These memories I have are so vivid, and I can't help but to think that it's mostly, if not partly, because of Donkey Kong 64. I can remember so vividly how it felt to be a 4-year-old in the year 2000. Not because I remember my everyday life all that well, but I remember these stone walls and the strange way the lighting changes on them. I can remember chilly winter mornings with the clearest blue skies because the crystals in these caves sparkled a specific way. I can remember visiting the shopping mall with my parents, not because I had that much fun, but this room reminds me of that. And it's such a strange feeling to me. It almost feels wrong. Like I should feel bad that I can't remember sections of my childhood based on their own merit as happy memories, but because they're neurally linked to some video game about monkeys. But the feeling I get is just too powerful. I can't put my finger on why, but I have such a strong connection to this feeling. This world is all mine to exist in. I can tell you what the sun would feel like on my face, how strong the wind would be. I could easily tell you what temperature the water in the ocean is. This initial room in the crystal caves, the blue hues, the stone walls, everything here should tell you that this is a cold and dark place, but I know for certain that this is warm and inviting. This forest, there's no way that it doesn't smell like damp wood and those few moments after a rain shower. These worlds, I feel, were given so much life. So much love and care went into the realization of these places, and I cannot ignore it. There's personality, there's life. These spaces are purely virtual, but to me, they're real. Rare put so much love into the visual design of these places that, as a child, I was able to sort of fill in the gaps of their limitations and the limitations of the medium, to fully realize these worlds in my head as places I could somehow visit and have all to myself. On top of all of that, these places exist outside of time. It never touches them. The house I grew up in as a child doesn't look the same as it once did. The town I grew up in has gone from being small and quiet to a lot larger, busier, and heavily commercialized. The house of the woman who used to babysit me, her kids have all grown up. They have moved on. That woman passed away a couple years ago, and that house will never be the same. But when I go back to Donkey Kong 64, nothing has changed. It's a piece of my childhood that is exactly as I left it, and I can spend hours rediscovering every little intricate detail of it. Not only it, but myself, the child that I used to be. And that's extremely comforting. Donkey Kong 64 is also responsible for one other thing. One of the most important things in my life. Music. The music of Donkey Kong 64 was composed by Grant Kirkhope, and it is a huge part of what gives this game life. This game is its music. Whenever you go to a new level in the game, you feel as though the music playing there is such a natural fit that there's no way the world could ever exist without it. I absolutely fell in love with the music in this game. So much so, in fact, that it's what got me started playing music in the first place. I've been playing the piano since I was about 6 years old. My dad bought this cheap piano from Target with light-up keys and built-in songs that you could follow along with, and just set it up in our living room, hoping that either me or my brother would just sit down and mess around with it. I sat at that piano all the time, following lights, trying to figure out cool sounds, until one day I realized that maybe I could try to play the music that I liked so much in my favorite video game. The reason that I write music today is at least partially because of Donkey Kong 64. For one reason or another, I somehow needed to hear my own interpretation of the music I love so much. I would hum the music of this game on the way to school. I would think about it constantly. I just needed a way to let it out. This game, Banjo-Kazooie, and its sequel were the 3 games solely responsible for jump-starting my love of music. After that, Kingdom Hearts was the final nail in the coffin. I was in love. I think I've talked long enough about what this game does to me emotionally and the strong connection I have to it. And what I find to be so sad about this entire thing is that it's hard to replicate. I don't know how many other people have had a story similar to this one. That one game, movie, or song, or whatever that has such a strong hold on you. I find that now it's very difficult to appreciate something like that on such an emotional level. But I did do it one more time. Super Mario Galaxy is a game that is so in tune with itself. Its imagination is bleeding through every frame of gameplay. Its setting beautifully conveys the silent but magical wonders of space, but also the bombastic and colorful fantasy of another grand Mario adventure. And in some strange way, it's one of the most comforting games I've ever played. Each play session feels like one long hug. Graphically, it's extremely impressive for the Wii. Its cinematic presentation is something that does a lot to make the game's plot and characters really feel like they bear a ton of weight. And musically, it's on another level. This here is the last time I can remember a game having such a strong effect on me. The game never hit that same Donkey Kong level of emotional impact again. There has to be some common denominator here. Maybe it's that all these games just really are that great underneath it all. Maybe I played them during a really formative time in my life. Or, more than likely, maybe it's just that these games are more than the sum of their parts. More than just simple platformers and a distraction from the real world. Games have become so much more than what the general public has or maybe even still views them as. We've come a long way from arcade cabinets and Tetris. These are beautiful stories. They're wondrous and captivating experiences. Entire worlds and adventures that put you at the center of their universe. Worlds teeming with character and color, with emotion and life. These games have always had their doors wide open, and all we have to do is walk through. I think the easy answer to the question I've been trying to figure out for so long is that I was young and impressionable. My brain was like a dry sponge, just soaking up every detail of every piece of information it took in. I played Donkey Kong 64 a lot when I was a single-digit age, so of course I would feel this way about it. But something in me won't accept that. Will I never experience those emotions again? And if I ever do, will I know it? It's difficult to tell. But what I'm able to easily figure out is that these emotions and memories are worth holding on to. The older I get and the more that I take in the mundanity of adulthood, the more those beautifully nostalgic moments become harder to find. So when it comes to Donkey Kong 64, I will always choose to ignore its painfully obtuse design, I choose not to cringe at the 3-minute long rap at the start of the game, because for everything else it did right, I now have this extremely solid connection to emotions I haven't felt since I was a child. For just a little bit, I can return to a world that remembers me. I look into Donkey Kong 64 and I see a reflection of myself staring back at me. It's different, yet very familiar. It's the me that's underneath everything, at the heart of who I really am. Under all the places I've been, the accomplishments and mistakes, the love for life and the contempt for its more difficult moments, this world of Donkey Kong 64 doesn't see that. I know those beaches. I know those caves, those mountains, the forests, the creepy castles and abandoned factories all remember me for who I was back then, and who I hope I still am now.